which I'm sorry. It is 4:30. My name is Jim Tripp. I chair this committee. This is the Judiciary Law Committee of the Board of Supervisors. It's May 24th, 2021, 4:30 in the afternoon. Call the meeting to order. Let the roll call reflect that all of the members of the committee are here, as well as Chairman Bartlett. Get your speaker on top. Down here. Click on that icon, that speaker icon down there. Excellent. First order of business is approval of the minutes from April 26th. I'd entertain a motion. I'm sorry, May 24th. Supervisor Vanderbilt moves. Supervisor Zahn seconds. Any questions, comments? Supervisor Zahn, did you want to speak to that?
Yeah.
Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion to approve the minutes from May 24th, say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? None, motion carries. Thank you, folks. Public comment. Krista, we don't have any public, I'm assuming.
No public comment.
Thank you. Then we'll get right on to staff reports. And in the order that they're printed in your agenda. And this month, I'm actually going to try to follow this. A lot of times I kind of just take them at random. But I understand Robert's rules kind of likes you to follow the order of the agenda. So I'm going to give that a shot this time. For all our loyal viewers out there, I know this will be a disappointment for you because you like the excitement of the other way, but here we go. Starting with the courts, Katie, do you have anything to add to your report or does anybody have questions? Katie first.
I do not have anything to add.
Anybody have questions or comments? Chairman Bartlett.
I noticed that the court is being conducted via Zoom. Are most of the proceedings Zoom now?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
still a hybrid method. So if people want to come in the building and they've been vaccinated, they do not need to wear a mask. But if they want to come in and they're not vaccinated, they need to wear a mask. So it's personal preference on the individuals. Some people like the Zoom hearings, so their preference is to still be heard by Zoom going forward. And we're going to try to accommodate that to the best of our ability going forward.
So the hearings are Zoom or the trials Zoom also?
Jury trials are not by Zoom. Those have to be held in person. So yeah, it's just a mixed hybrid in some of the courts that we're still being broadcasted to our, used to be YouTube. It's our DA cast. Essentially, it's our live streaming purposes. So you can still view court from sitting at home.
Thank you.
Yes.
Anyone else have comments or questions for Katie? I just wanted to comment. I see that Judge Smeltzer is going to receive the Lifetime Jurist Award.
Yes.
And we should make it part of the record that we congratulate him. And it's nice to see that other people appreciate his contributions as well.
Yes. He was very honored by it. We are planning to do a retirement party for Judge Smeltzer as well. That will be on Friday, July 30th. And then we will have the investiture for Judge-elect Wagner and Judge-elect Meyer on Friday, August 6th. So we're kind of in the party planning stages as well. So you'll be seeing emails from us for invitations for those events as well in the near future.
Those on the calendar. I was also happy to see that the crews arrived for the new branch 3 court. So we're all 3 branches, courtrooms equipped,
Everything
ready
is
to
good
roll?
to go. Yep, the state's going to deliver the computers tomorrow for the judges and laptops. So we will be ready to roll starting when their first date on August 2nd.
Great. Thank you, Katie. Anybody else? Last chance? If not, we're going to move on to CJCC. Sarah, your report is here as well. Do you have anything to add?
No, I don't.
Any questions for Sarah regarding CJCC? May have said this already, but again, congratulations on the grant for the the computers, sanitizers, et cetera. Are those computers delivered yet? Those
No, we
laptops?
just got the grant paperwork signed, so now we're waiting for finance to build it in
Oh, I
SAP.
thought I saw a check change hands.
Yeah,
the other
that,
day.
now we got the green light to make those purchases.
Excellent. Anyone else? Again, seeing none, we're going to move right along to the district attorney. Andrea, do you have anything to add to your report?
Yes, we were able to.
Down your speaker down there.
You're muted, so you should be good.
Like that. I'll click on the left-hand side, like that, right there. Oh, she's, yeah, see it. Oh, cool. You have it. Get that on.
Okay. So for the victim witness position, it's a 30-hour per week. We were able to advertise and did interviews last week. Narrowed it down to 2 individuals. We're doing second interviews this week. Again, that's a position that's pretty low on the pay scale. It's part-time, so we get a lot of turnover, but hoping we can find some that stick around at least a few years. One of the assistant district attorneys had a jury trial, so it was his second in his career. So that was very good experience. He did well. So it's nice to be back having jury trials again. The new roof, I think, is supposed to start at the Judicial Center, and my staff are very happy about that. So I appreciate the county working on getting that done this year, because every time there's rain, it's always an adventure. And then we worked with Chris Corpola. We have some grant funds for the CHIPS and termination of parental right cases that we have. And so we're sending a group to the National Drug Endangered Children Conference at the end of August. So got signed up for that. That's all I have.
Thank you. Questions? Anything else regarding district attorney's office? Seeing none, move right along to child support. Josie, you're on TV somewhere. Yep, there you are.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't have anything to add to my report, I guess, except for we did have interviews last week for our 2 vacancies, and second interviews will be held tomorrow and Wednesday. So hopefully we'll be able to announce our new hires at the next meeting.
Great. Questions for Josie? Supervisor Powell.
I just got a question on that Bill 105, the child
Yes.
support standard. Why the change, and what's the difference, or why did they change it?
Sure. Well, every 4 years, the state is required under federal law to review its guidelines. And so this kind of came out of that. And child support, not necessarily child support, families have evolved, I guess, over the last handful of years, so that shared parenting time is no longer, it's more normal and not necessarily an exception. So they put the shared parenting formula ahead of all the different ways of calculating support. So I guess the assumption is that we're not going to assume that when families aren't living together with their children, that one parent has the majority of the time over the other. So we're going to assume that there's some shared parenting placement going on. And if that's not the case, then we'll revert to our standard percentage, which had been the priority previously. So 17% for one child, 25% for 2, and so on. And so by restructuring the existing law, we didn't have to get our legislature to agree to a new law, which can be problematic. So, and there's this perception that it's just more fair. The shared parenting formula, it's an offset of both households' income. It's like a balancing act to balance out the child's standard of living between the homes. And Minnesota, for instance, has that sort of a model. And the perception is that it's more fair, even though the straight percentage, even though it's not part of the formula, the other parents it's just assumed to be contributing to the support of the child just because the child is primarily there most of the time. So if that makes sense.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Yeah, good question. Thank you, Bob. I just wanted to comment on a couple of things. Number one, the nomination of Jeannie Stevenson, I think is appropriate, and if a letter of support for that from this committee is desired, I think the committee would be happy to provide that.
Absolutely. I can
And
get you that information.
secondly, the kudos to Josie for being asked to join the WCSEA work group. That's also it's an indication that the people in Dunn County are taken seriously and that their voices are important. So congratulations, and I know you'll do well on that. Thank you, Josie.
Thank you.
Any other comments, questions about child support? Seeing none, we're going to move on to emergency management, 911. Melissa, there she is. Do you have anything to add to your report?
Nope, nothing.
Any questions for Melissa? There were a couple of things in the, it's kind of interesting being in the local emergency planning committee meetings, sitting in on those. And I'm going to share this comment with you. I was out of town with some friends when that meeting occurred, and I did it on Zoom. I wish that every American could watch a meeting like that and get some sense of the decent, honest, hardworking people that are doing their best to do the business of government on a day-to-day basis. I think we'd have a lot less suspicion of government and a lot less complaining about government. Here are a whole bunch of people from private industry, from the medical profession, from government that are talking about establishing, maintaining, and being ready to carry out plans in case of an emergency. That's what government does. It's just such an impressive, and the meeting is short. It lasted what, Melissa, 50 minutes or something?
Yep.
Like that?
Yep.
Doesn't take all day, but the plans for dealing with those emergencies are well designed. It's to my mind at least, a perfect example of everyday good government. So thanks for your part in that, Melissa, as well.
Thank you very much for the comments. I appreciate it.
Anything else? Then moving right along, medical examiner. Marcy, do you have anything to add to your report?
Nothing to add.
Couple of nice hires, looks like.
One nice hire so far.
Oh, I thought,
I've got a chief deputy position that's still open,
okay,
but the full-time has been filled.
great.
Could you speak into the mic a little bit more, please?
And you hired a part-time one?
Pardon me?
You hired a part-time
Carrie
one?
Johnson.
Carrie was hired as LTE, and I will move her into one of my deputy positions. And for those of you who don't know, Carrie is a retired state patrol sergeant, and so we're very happy to have her on board. She knows a lot of our Dunn County law enforcement. So we will move her from the LTE to one of the two openings as a deputy. And then Mark Pugmire was hired for the full-time chief deputy position.
Just the kind of people you said you were looking for.
Absolutely.
Excellent.
Very pleased. Thank you.
Is that gonna take some load off you?
I do believe so. Yes, having a full-time person and getting our deputy staff up, I believe it will.
Are you gonna get a part-time job then? Or
Probably.
kind of, so the change isn't too drastic?
Right,
Yeah.
right. No, it's a welcome change for sure.
Anything else for the medical examiner? I shouldn't. Yeah. Then we'll move right along to the sheriff's office. Marshall, anything to add to the written report?
Nothing to add.
Brenda, from the jail, anything you'd like to add?
Nothing to add.
Questions for the sheriff? We've got a couple of things coming out of that that are action items. Seeing none. Okay, we're gonna get done before the. Items to be placed at the request of the chair. I would like to have a little bit of a discussion about the logistics for going through department budgets. And I specifically talked to Chairman Bartlett a few days ago and talked to him about what this might involve. And maybe we could start that by looking at the budget calendar. So when are the department budgets going to be available to the committee?
Sarah, it's August, isn't it?
Yes,
Mid-August, by the August meeting?
yes, it should be.
Okay, so we got a couple of months to get ready. We've got a special board meeting and that's in July, right? To talk about the budget a little bit.
August 10th,
Oh, August 10th.
I believe.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Our July meeting is late and then the August meeting we don't normally have. So we will have had some opportunity to talk about the budget in general. We will have looked at the department budgets, have those in hand. And when Chairman Bartlett and I talked about this the other day, I think it's useful, and you can give me some feedback, but I think it's useful to have those budgets in hand, look at them together, ask some basic questions before we start going through them in any kind of detail. And I'd welcome any feedback about that. I keep saying I'd welcome feedback and then I keep talking, but to the department heads specifically, we do not want to write your department budgets. I've got no interest in doing that whatsoever. But it is important, I think, that we have a better understanding and a better knowledge of what those budgets contain. And if we can do that, then ultimately it's going to come before the executive committee. And I think this year all supervisors are going to have a little bit more opportunity to weigh in. And we'll be able to do so with a higher degree of knowledge and a greater understanding of what we're recommending. Okay, now I'm going to shut up for a minute. Does anybody have suggestions on how we might want to do this? Do we want to have a couple of meetings, divide the budgets up, assign specific times for departments? That's the way it was done a few years ago. Gonna leave it up to me to tell you.
So you all get your budget books, electronic probably, but the budget will come to the county board at the July meeting.
Supervisor Rogers, thank you.
Can we maybe have an opportunity to get a little more in-depth into the budget to better understand how it all, I have a little bit of a struggle completely comprehending what everything means within the budget. And I mean, I'm not completely naive, but I feel that way when I'm going through that budget.
That's the intention, exactly, really. Because frankly, I've been through, I don't know how many of these budgets, and still, when I look at a new budget in a new year, I think to myself, well, what's that again? Everybody can use a refresher, so absolutely. Here's what I will say. I would more than welcome any thoughts, feedback you might have. You can send those to me personally. Otherwise, what will happen is we'll take a look at what we get in terms of budgets. And my guess is that we might want to set a couple of meetings. We might want to divide the budgets up, half the departments at one meeting, half at another, see if we can kind of balance those times. I think we're going to want to establish specific times for departments to talk about their budgets, because there's no reason for Andrea to sit here and listen to necessarily the medical examiner's budget, in spite of the fact that a lot of the duties overlap and you may have impacts, but seriously, you folks have got better things to do with your time. So we'll try to put something like that together, and at any point, if you have input, boy, I'd certainly appreciate hearing it. I did hear from Supervisor Bauer in terms of time constraints. The meetings would not take place any earlier than this. I'm guessing so that we can accommodate. The whole idea is committee members being more familiar, so it doesn't make any sense to have a meeting where you can't be here.
I can get time to get to these meetings. If I have to, if you do schedule early, I'll just try to get it.
We'll try to accommodate that. Otherwise, what we'll try to do is put together a schedule where we can spend some time talking a little bit more, well, significantly more in depth about what's in the budget, what it means, how it might have changed from the previous year, where the money's coming from. There are a couple of things that I'd like us to be sure to avoid. One being the debacle with the highway department, where apparently for a number of years they had an income item that they didn't really have income for. That's hard to explain and justify. Another, frankly, is Marcy's situation. We should have dealt with those deputy medical examiner positions years ago. We should have had that in the budget. And it bothers me when things get to a point where we're dealing with emergencies rather than serious items. Let's get it out in front of them. And as supervisors, setting policy, the way we really do that is with the budget. So, okay, made my speech. Any other?
I agree with, I mean, approaching it that way, it's just a lot more thorough and more gives us what Supervisor Rogers said as far as being able to have more time to understand different elements of the budget that maybe we're not familiar with.
Good, appreciate the comment, thank you.
I think years ago, we used to go over the budgets line by line. We got the old budget books and with SAP and other things happening. We seem to fall away from that a little bit for the last few years. I'm hoping to bring that back, that we go over the budgets fairly thoroughly so that the highways thing doesn't happen anyplace else. And we all understand every line, and we don't understand it, we should ask the question about it, so we do understand. At least if every committee does that, the whole budget will be understood by supervisors.
Supervisor Vanderbilt.
Just like to add that.
Can you speak into the mic, please?
We all want to have a lean county budget, but I personally don't want to emphasize that so much that department chairs are sacrificing their own health or the capabilities of their department by asking for less than they actually need for something. I don't want to see department chairs, for instance, putting in a lot of quiet overtime because they really should have budgeted for some additional help. So I think that'll be something.
Well, it's all part of the total budget. There's only so much, the pot's only so big. So if everybody understands the line of, their own budget, in this case, Judiciary Law's budget, that you understand those line items and ask whether they're use evidence-based thinking of whether they're critical or we need them or not, and so that in the end we can make, as a county board, we can make our decisions, because we're going to have to make a decision on the total budget, and there's only so much money there. And just as Supervisor Tripp said, wished we would have done something earlier with the medical examiner. I don't disagree with that, but we would have had to make a difficult decision, one that some supervisors don't like to make. And now this year, we're going to have to make that because now they're hired. And we're going to have to, we got it out of contingency for this year. but where's it gonna come from next year? And it's gonna come from someplace because the pot's only so big. And we all have to keep that in mind, that, you know, it isn't a pot of money that keeps growing, it doesn't grow.
It's not.
No, sorry to say, because of the legislature of what they've done, they've tied their hands that we can't, you know, grow that pot. So we're going to have to make some tough changes, tough decisions, and that's why I would like every committee to totally understand their budget completely, so hopefully we can make those educated decisions.
At the same time, we're working with legislators to try to give us a little more room.
We have been, but we've been doing that since I've been on. We've been doing that for a number of years now. We haven't gotten any place yet.
Well, I had a conversation with Representative Moses, and he sounded quite committed to it. So I hope something more comes out of that.
Thank you. As Chairman Bartlett said, this process is not going to make the budget any easier. But I'm hopeful that what it will do is when it comes time to vote up and down on specific items in the budget as a whole, we're more confident that we're voting intelligently and correctly. Supervisor Rogers.
Well, I appreciate what you're putting forward, and I appreciate Dave's comments about getting more information in our hands so that it is easier for us to make those tough decisions. Whereas in the past, I felt we're making tough decisions, and I didn't necessarily feel that I was well informed. And part of it is because we have to do more work ourselves, but at the same time, I appreciate you putting forth more for us to work off from.
Thank you. One of the things that occurs to me is if you've got the time this year, it'll be interesting to, you can watch these budget meetings from other committees on YouTube, which is kind of a nice feature. At least you get to look at, you don't get to participate, but you can at least watch the discussion, and that is sometimes pretty useful too. Any other comments in regard to the logistics for actually doing this? That's where the agenda says we are. Logistics. Yes.
Would you want us as department heads to do a written submission for you for the month of July to review it? Is that come August, if there's questions, you'd have a little bit more time to prepare yourself? Or is the current budget packet enough for you to base your decisions off of?
That's a hard question for me to answer. On the one hand, I always worry a little bit that the committee is asking you to do department heads, and your people to be doing work for our enlightenment, that you probably ought to be spending that time working on your jobs. On the other hand, understanding the budget is kind of paramount. Chairman Bartlett, do you have any reaction to that suggestion?
I believe if we get the budget in July and each committee goes over it thoroughly, you know, when I say line by line, there's going to be some lines like wages and stuff that there's really no discussion. So, but to go over the other parts of it, if everybody understands each line and the department head helps understand, and if there's a question, they ask that question, that there'd be no reason to do any other work before that committee meeting. I mean, that's where you're going to hopefully be able to sit down in person like we are today and go over the total budget.
That would kind of be my reaction as well. I prepared a few budgets that had to be approved, and I could pretty much tell what parts were going to be questioned or which parts I was going to have to explain. And I think if department heads come to the meetings prepared to talk about those things, that'll be probably most helpful. Yep.
That sounds good to me.
All right. Anything else? Any other reaction from department heads? Thank you, Katie. I appreciate that. Again, we don't want to write your budgets and we don't want to create work for you that's unnecessary, but we do want to be able to understand your budget well enough so that, frankly, I look at it as this committee will defend the budgets that we believe are important, the budget items, and we know better than other supervisors where that line is and what those priorities are. So it's up to us to advocate for those things, and the better we understand, the more successful we can be in advocacy. So thank you to all who have participated in the conversation. It'll be interesting to see how this develops. Item 7, consideration of actions. We have a request to update the eligibility list. Marshall, do you want to, do we need a motion first? Why don't you tell us a little bit about it first, then we'll have a motion, and then we'll discuss.
If anybody wasn't aware, when we did our last recruitment process, there was 11 people that passed all the written physical agility and all the requirements to be considered. Therefore, we had interviews in front of the committee, civil service committee, bring it down to 10. So obviously, if you get 10 out of 100, that might be 10 good hires. You get 10 out of 11, you have 10 people. We hired 2 people out there for full-time positions. We backgrounded 3 additional, which did not meet our requirements. They didn't pass their background. And the remaining were either tech school students or those that were not certifiable at this time. So we couldn't even offer them a position at this time if one became available. And like we explained in the past, we're just not willing, and I know you guys support it, we're not willing to reach for somebody just to hire somebody. It's a smaller department, especially in law enforcement, visible public. We want to make sure that we're hiring who we feel is capable to do the position for long term. It's much too difficult to get rid of a bad employee. It's much easier to hire good ones at the front. Therefore, we have the belief that we're going to have one opening here within the next couple of months. So the process takes a while. That's why we're asking for the list at this time to be washed so we can start the process of a new list so we can have at least a hireable person on there when it needs to be.
If I'm correct, I'm going to ask for a motion in a minute, and that motion would probably be to eliminate the old list and form a new one.
Correct.
I would entertain a motion to that effect. Supervisor Rogers moves, Supervisor Vandermill seconds. The discussion on the motion. Do you think that you'll get a pool of candidates?
Yes.
Hopeful?
Yes. We've heard from a subject or 2 that did not apply last time. There will be good employees that plan on applying this time. I've encouraged a few of those that are not qualified at this time, if they want to reapply, because they could be certifiable at the time of the next hire. So I believe, I think we'll be much farther ahead than we are at this point. Otherwise, we'll be asking.
I recall a couple of military personnel that didn't look like they were quite ready to, but looked like they maybe had the background to.
Yes, I actually have spoken to him and asked him to apply again. Just he's not hireable at this time.
Any other discussion? We have a motion and a second to eliminate the current eligibility list and form a new one. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. And Marshall, you'll put that in the works.
Thank you.
Item number 8, consideration of reports to the county board. We have a resolution that would adjust the budget to take into account a donation to the Canine Fund. You should have that resolution for that budget adjustment in your packet. I would entertain a motion and then we can talk about it. Supervisor Bauer moves, Supervisor Zahn seconds. Marshall, anything you want to say about this?
No, it's basically, we're lucky enough somebody came to our front car one day, wished to write us a check for a donation to the Canine Fund in the amount of $5,000. You want a recognition for it. I'm so gladly accepted that donation, especially with the fact that we're starting at the Canine based upon Jackson's retirement.
Or does Jax get the standard Wisconsin retirement thing when he unfortunately didn't pay into it? Any discussion on the motion? Pretty straightforward. Now, do we need a roll call vote on that? Budget motion? When do they call? Not at committee. Thank you. Seeing no discussion, all those in favor of the motion to approve the resolution on the budget adjustment for the K-9 donation, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And the motion carries. Thank you. And that will be forwarded to executive committee. They will then forward that on to the county board because the executive committee does all budget work. That brings us to pretty much the conclusion of the business. Anybody have any announcements? Oh, boy, land speed record for meetings. No announcements? 4th of July coming up. Sheriff's Department's ready for that, I'm sure. Rest of you are going to be on your best behavior. Keep those illegal fireworks to a minimum. Fly your flag, have your hot dogs, be safe, and enjoy the weekend. Next meeting is scheduled for July 26th, 4:30. That's our regular meeting date and time. Any problems there? Don't see any reaction to this. So the business of the meeting being concluded. July 26th. That's Monday, right? Yeah. Business of the meeting being concluded, I declare the meeting adjourned. Thank you to Krista. Thanks to Katie for setting the meeting up. Thanks to the IT. Thanks to the